I've done a series of videos recently where I've compared and contrasted classic American gold coins, sometimes we call those pre-33 for shorthand, with the modern American gold bullion program that's called the American Gold Eagle. And I thought that was a pretty interesting series of videos, two of them, one with full-sized coins, the 1 troy ounce versus the $20 gold piece, and also the smaller pieces, so the fractional American Gold Eagle coins and their counterparts from pre-33 gold circulation. And then I had somebody leave a comment beneath the most recent of those two videos, and I'll put those video links down below so you can watch them if you haven't seen them. Tommy Stacker 3286 on the video about pre-33 Saints versus the full-size American Eagle, he said, perhaps you've already done a series on the American Silver Eagle. If not, that would be great. Now, I had kind of in the back of my mind thought about the idea of comparing and contrasting classic American silver coins with their modern American bullion silver counterparts. And it's a logical thing to do. So I'm really glad that Tommy Stacker suggested this video. That's what this video is going to be about. We're going to compare and contrast the classic American silver dollars with the modern American silver Eagle bullion coins. A nice compare and contrast, and I'll let you have as much information as I can possibly give you so you can kind of decide which of these paths you want to go down. Maybe you were already deep into these, and I'd love to hear your comments about them also. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C. I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, love to have you click on the subscription button, hit the like button and the notification button, all that kind of fun stuff. Love to have you be part of this community. If you're one of my returning subscribers, thanks guys as always for being here. This is apparently the video that needed to be made. So let's dive into the idea of classic American silver dollars versus modern American silver Eagle dollars. This will be kind of a fun one, I think. If you are new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I also like to begin my videos where I can with a couple of definitions. Now, you guys who are old hat are really going to know these definitions because I talk about these two pretty frequently, but this is really important to understand when you're talking about classic American silver dollars versus the modern American Silver Eagle Bullion program. And the first one of those is actual silver weight. I've talked about that one a lot recently. Actual silver weight is the amount of pure silver contained within any coin that you're talking about. And this is particularly useful when you're talking about coins that have been alloyed with other metals. Traditionally, American silver circulating coins were alloyed with 90% silver, 10% copper, because the copper gives these pieces a lot more durability. Remember that these were circulating coins. And as I'm fond of saying, circulating coins are some of the hardest working machines that human beings ever invented. So these pieces were expected to circulate every single day, and that circulation causes wear and tear on the coins. That's actually how we grade coins, by the amount of friction and wear that those pieces have seen. So 90% silver, 10% copper. Sometimes we use the shorthand 90%. It's an easy way to identify older coins that used to circulate as opposed to modern bullion pieces. But the reason we use actual silver weight, and sometimes you see that abbreviated ASW, is because when you're comparing coins, especially of different alloys in different countries, in different periods of time, it's really helpful to know how much pure silver is contained within each of these pieces. We don't really care so much about how much copper or nickel or other elements are alloyed with that silver. We want to get out the silver content. And a lot of publications like NGC and PCGS and Numista, these are all websites, carry the actual silver weight of just about every coin that you can think of. I think it's a really helpful thing to get familiar with those websites, and I'll leave them down below so you can check them out if you're not familiar with them. Find the individual coins that you're talking about, and often they will provide you the ASW. Typically that's in the form of troy ounces or fractions thereof or percentages of a troy ounce. Troy ounce is simply the standard unit of measurement for when we're measuring precious metals, whether it's gold, silver, or platinum. So that's the first term, actual silver weight. And we'll talk about examples of actual silver weight as we compare and contrast these really beautiful silver coins. And the next one is NCLT. I talk about NCLT a lot on this channel also because that's the way that I identify coins that were made not to be spent, but were actually made as a bullion vehicle. This was a way for you to buy, in this case, silver, 1 troy ounce of silver in the form of American silver eagle. Now, we call it non-circulating legal tender because these are actually coins. These are made by a sovereign country. They do have a face value on them. They have a date. They have a mint mark. They have all of those qualifications that we think of when we're thinking about an actual coin. But unlike these earlier pieces, these pieces were never meant to circulate, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, the idea of non-circulating legal tender. Why would you do that? It has a lot to do with the legality of these pieces. These are pieces that might qualify for a retirement account. So when the United States government is putting out these silver coins, they denominate these as $1, even though silver is currently trading somewhere in that $28, $29, $30 per ounce range. Keep in mind that silver, a globally traded commodity, that price could be considerably higher or lower when you're watching this video. But there's no reason in the world to call these $1 when the amount of silver contained within them is easily more than $25. It's that non-circulating legal tender term, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as we get deeper into this as well. So a little bit of really brief history. We'll talk about the idea of a large size silver coin. Where does it come from? Where does the term dollar come from? Then I'll talk a little bit about the Morgan dollars and the peace dollars. Those are the most typically encountered silver coins when we're stacking precious metals, and sometimes maybe even bridging that gap between stacking precious metals and collecting coins. We'll talk about a compare and contrast between these older pieces and the modern American silver eagle. I'll talk about some of the benefits, some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of them. And then towards the end of the video, we'll wrap it up and I'll give you some of my tips and suggestions. This is really one of those interesting things that you have people who come down on either side of these and they get really, really passionate about them. They want nothing to do with silver eagles, or they want nothing to do with classic American silver dollars. It's really an interesting dichotomy, and it's a fun thing to watch. You can see that I have plenty of both. I have always been a fan of both. I might lean a little bit more towards the classic stuff. Let me know how you feel about that as we get a little bit deeper into this. So where does the idea of these large-size silver coins come from? I've talked a little bit about that in the past. Some of my earliest videos were about the evolution of the American silver dollar, and it's probably germane to talk about that too. Up until about the late 1400s, silver coins, like gold coins, were typically quite small. Think of them in terms of an American nickel or maybe an American quarter. Those were what most silver and gold coins were in terms of their size. Then about the 1480s, the Gulden Groschen, this is part of an Eastern German, Eastern European area, started to evolve. This became a very large size silver coin, and it really kind of caught fire. If you were a merchant and you were looking at, trading your goods and services for these very small silver coins, and somebody comes in with a handful of these great big silver coins, it's going to get your blood pumping the same way that it gets our blood pumping in the year 2025 and beyond. So this was really kind of an exciting development, something that really hadn't been seen before. The problem with those earliest pieces is that they didn't really equate to the most standard units of measurement that were used, and that really happened about 1520. There was a valley in Bohemia called Jokum's Tal being the valley, Jokum being kind of the valley of Joseph, Saint Joseph. And there was a silver mine there, and one of the local dukes started making his own large-size silver coins that really worked well in translating between some of the most commonly used smaller silver and gold coins at the time. And that's when this idea of these large-size silver coins really started to explode and became the norm. This became what was expected. But because these came from Jokum's Tal, they took on the name of a Jokum's Taler. Tal again being kind of the word for a valley. So they became called Jokum's Talers, and that became shortened to Taler, which became our dollar. That's where this all originated, somewhere around the 1500s. And I've got an example This piece is a little bit later, but it will give you an idea. This is a German piece from the 1660s. This is one of these large-size silver coins that we call a thaler. This one with the figure of the wild man on it. A beautiful coin. You can see just how big it is, and we're comparing it to a modern American silver eagle. You can see that they are roughly the same size, right? There is a reason why these coins became so popular, and it's a standard that continues to be used to this day, but it really started back in the 1500s. And the ones that took off in terms of American coinage, when we really think about early colonial pieces, we tend to think of the Spanish 8 reales. And I have done lots of videos where I talk about these. These were really, in a lot of ways, the first global currency, circulating from Europe to the Americas, to China and beyond. These large-size silver coins, we call these pieces of 8 because they were often split into fourths or even eighths in order to make them easier to spend, were legal tender in the United States of America all the way up until 1857. And in fact, it was Alexander Hamilton who used these pieces to decide how big our American silver dollars would be once the United States of America started making silver dollars. And when we talk about the kinds of silver dollars that would be stacked by your typical stacker, we generally talk about Morgan silver dollars and piece silver dollars. And I'll talk about each one of those, but it's important to understand that the United States of America did have other series before the Morgan and the piece dollar. We started off with the flowing hair, and if that sounds familiar, the United States Mint has re-released a flowing hair silver dollar. I have to put it in quotes because it's not technically a silver dollar. Pretty recently. Beautiful pieces. If you don't if you're not familiar with those, I put out several videos talking about those pieces as well. After the flowing hair, we released the draped bust style. Following that, there was the Gobrecht style. And then shortly after that, there was the Seated Liberty style. Seated Liberty came immediately before the Morgan dollars. Now, we have released other series since then. People are probably saying, what about the trade dollar? Let's not get into that. A beautiful coin in its own right, but that was a specific used type coin up until the point that we started making Morgan dollars. We made the Seated Liberty dollar. And the coins that had been made before were almost a novelty. Not many people would have been spending large-size silver pieces. We had a $50 that was pretty popular, and that was really the kind of largest silver coin that we would often see in this country. But with the proliferation of mining in the American West, in particular the Comstock mines in places like Nevada, we suddenly found ourselves, the United States of America, with a ton of silver, literally tons and tons and tons of silver, where we'd really never had that much before. So we started making these large-size silver dollars again, and this time, instead of being kind of a novelty where we might make 10 or 20 or 30,000 per year, we started making tens of million per year. And that's really the birth of the Morgan silver dollar. So the Morgan silver dollar, and here's an example of a well-circulated Morgan silver dollar, so named for George Morgan, who was one of the higher-ups in the United States Mint. He is the designer of this piece. This is a beautiful coin. This is what a lot of us think of when we think of a silver dollar. We think of the Morgan silver dollar, made from 1878, again, with that kind of nod to the Comstock lode and the rest of those large silver veins that we were discovering in the American Southwest. These were popular from 1878 and made up until about 1904. And then there was a big lull where we didn't make them again. We had kind of run out of our silver holdings in the United States. And we started making them again really briefly in 1921 to coincide with the release of the newer silver dollar, which was the piece dollar. So the Morgan dollar, when we think about the dollars that circulated in the American West, when we think about those riverboat gamblers, or we think about those saloons and those cowboys, it's the Morgan dollar that we're thinking about. And then in 1921, we released the piece dollar. Piece dollar is maybe not quite as popular as the Morgan dollar, and just as there are people who would rather have maybe American silver eagles over the classic silver dollars, or vice versa, there are people who feel very passionately one way or another, whether it's for the Morgan dollar or the piece dollar. So these large-size silver dollars, really the first time that these were made in huge enough quantities that they saw circulation, they are 26.73 grams of 90% silver, which means that their actual silver weight is 24.05 grams of pure silver, or in terms of a troy ounce, 0.7734. Now, that is a standard that we had used for a very long period of time, but it doesn't work very well in modern bullion standards where we're used to very specific quantities of grams or a very specific number of troy ounces, and that's where the American Silver Eagle comes in. So whether it's the Morgan dollar or the peace dollar, 26.73 grams of 90% silver, so their actual silver weight, 0.7734 of a troy ounce of silver. The American peace dollar, first released in 1921, the 21 peace dollar is one of my all-time favorite coins, released all the way up into 1935, and there were years that we skipped making the peace dollars also. The peace dollars didn't really circulate that much. Anecdotally, you might have people who remember the peace dollar circulating all the way up until the 1960s, but if it wasn't in the American Southwest, remember this was a region that actually produced the silver from which most of these pieces were struck, and Las Vegas was a great place to find silver dollars up until some people even say the mid-1970s, even after silver had really been removed from the United States circulating coinage. But the peace dollars didn't really circulate that much, and consequently you can find peace dollars in maybe slightly better condition than your typical Morgan dollars, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment also. So that brings us up to date, right? 1935, the last time we really made silver dollars in this country, all the way up until 1964, and those pieces never saw circulation either. There were some alloyed Eisenhower silver dollars that were released sporadically from the mint, but really our circulating silver dollars stopped all the way back in 1935 with the last of the peace dollars. So that's the end of our classic pieces. Then we have a really interesting series of events that kind of manifested the release of the American Silver Eagle. And just as there was a lot of history behind the classic silver dollars, there was some interesting history around the American Silver Eagles. We mentioned before that we stopped putting out 90% silver coins in 1964. That was the last year we did that. We did release 40% silver half dollars for about 5 years after that. But those 40% silver half dollars don't really figure into the equation. The United States of America redeemed our silver certificates mostly for these classic silver dollars, sometimes for silver shot. But that still left a large strategic supply of silver in America's vaults. And there were efforts many times to sell that silver, to finally get it off the books, to maybe pay down the national debt. The problem is that every time the United States of America talked about releasing some of this silver strategic supply, and some silver bars out there do contain silver that was originally in this strategic silver stockpile. Every time we talked about doing it, it would drive the price of silver down. That's how much silver the United States Mint or the United States Treasury had on hand. So much so that every time we even floated legislation, it would make the price of silver crash. And that doesn't help us when we're trying to sell the silver to speculators or investors. And it was kind of funny. There's an Idaho senator named McClure. He kept on trying to block this legislation every time he came up. That's because Idaho is a huge silver producing state, and he knew that it would negatively impact his constituents. So every time somebody tried to put legislation in that would allow America to sell some of its silver stockpile, he would put out legislation that tried to block it. And then he came up with a really interesting idea. And that was, instead of selling this strategic stockpile to somebody else and maybe letting them make silver bars or silver rounds or coins or whatever out of it, maybe the United States of America could release their own silver coins. This is a really nuanced idea, and it goes to show you just how clever he was, because he knew, McClure, knew that if he was successful in getting this legislation passed, and if these coins, which is what he originally proposed, if these coins were successful and were sought the demand or found the demand that he suspected they would, eventually we would run out of that strategic stockpile and we would have to replenish it with silver from places like Idaho. And it turns out that he put out this legislation or proposed this legislation where we would start making and selling a silver bullion coin for the first time. And the powers that be finally realized that this was a good way to go. So Ronald Reagan signed this into legislation in January of 1985, with the first American silver eagle being released in 1986. And when we released the American Silver Eagle, we actually put some thought into it. So we have to give credit to the people that were behind the scenes. In this case, they wanted these pieces to be exactly 1 full troy ounce of pure silver. That made them really easy to understand. And if you check on the websites today, back then it would have been the newspaper, to find out what the price of silver was, you knew automatically that no matter what the price of silver was, each one of these American Silver Eagle coins was exactly 1 full troy ounce of pure silver. So it was really easy to calculate how much your silver was worth. A great idea, a fantastic idea. The fact that it is a denominated American silver coin is a great idea. That's what the American Silver Eagle became, and that's the birth of the American Silver Eagle. So we have a beautiful American Silver Eagle struck from 1986. They immediately exploded on the scene. The United States of America has struck them consistently since then in very large quantities, often tens of millions of pieces per year. But they are a very easy to understand, simple modern bullion vehicle, and they are pure silver. It's important to know that the actual silver weight of these pieces is 1 troy ounce. It's very simple. So how do we compare and contrast these two? Let's talk a little bit about the compare and contrast, because there are people who do prefer the classic pieces versus the American Silver Eagle. They are both silver dollars. They are all American silver dollars, whether it's the Morgan the piece or the American Silver Eagle. But again, the American Silver Eagle, non-circulating legal tender. It was never intended to circulate. It's got a very low face value relative to the value of the silver contained within it. So that's really the first thing to note. 90% silver, 10% copper, 100% silver, or 99.9. We're talking about 999 parts per thousand pure silver, and that's in the standard that would be considered pure silver, the industry. So the gross weight on these, 26.73 grams, the actual silver weight, 0.7734 of a troy ounce, and people always want to compare and contrast, so why not, right? If we've got an opportunity to talk about these beautiful classic silver dollars, there's a good comparison of the Morgan dollar here on the left, the piece dollar there on the right, flipping them over so you can see kind of the reverse or the back of these pieces. To give you an idea of what they look like if you're not familiar with them. I am partial to the piece dollars, but I'm warming up to the idea of a Morgan dollar. Over time, it's taken me probably close to 50 years, but I can appreciate a really nice Morgan dollar now also. The important thing to understand is that these pieces do not contain a full troy ounce of pure silver. And if you don't like doing math, and if you don't like the idea of homework when it comes to deciding how much silver you have, that's probably the biggest caution about those pieces. The American Silver Eagle is exactly 1 full troy ounce. The Morgan dollars and the piece dollars do have incredibly rare examples. There are incredibly rare dates and mint marks, if you're not familiar with those. I'll check out the video series where I talk about kind of the beginning terms to understand when you're talking about collecting coins. There are incredibly rare combinations of dates and mint marks for both the piece dollar and the Morgan dollar series. Some of these pieces can cost tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not really what we're talking about in this video. We're really talking about holding these as a way to own physical precious metals. So while there are incredibly rare examples of these, there are some somewhat rare examples of the American Silver Eagles. Again, not really the kinds of things that we're talking about when we're just talking about stacking physical precious metals. Check out the prices of these pieces, and the best way to compare and contrast these, I think, is to look at the prices. And you're looking at here on a kind of a national bullion retailer's website. They have random BU. I just put out a video where we talked about the difficulties of using the term BU, but that's shorthand for kind of lower end uncirculated coins. A random BU Morgan dollars, $47.99 as I'm filming today. Random AU, that is about uncirculated Morgan dollars, $36.99 a piece. So if the price of silver is somewhere right around $30 right now as I'm filming, you can see that there is a pretty substantial premium for these Morgan dollars in BU or even AU condition. They do also sell culls. A cull is an example of a silver dollar that is generally so well worn that it's lost all of its collectability and really is just the kind of thing that you would hold as a pure silver play. Not a pure silver play, but as a silver play. I don't recommend culls, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute also. But those are priced at $27.99, much more affordable. In fact, that is probably really close to their silver value as I'm filming here today. They do have what I think might kind of be the sweet spot, not necessarily something to pick up online, but something to maybe look for at your local dealers, and that's coins that are in the VG to VF random date and mint mark, and that's really what you're looking at here. These pieces would all probably be considered in somewhere in that range of maybe 30 to 45 on the Sheldon grading scale of 1 to 70. And that, as a sweet spot, $31.99 a piece. I think I'd rather have those pieces that have a little bit of wear that are still quite affordable versus those pieces that are so well worn that you can't even really identify what they are. So that to me is kind of the sweet spot. We'll talk about that again in just a moment. Peace dollars are another story entirely. I said before in the earlier in this video that peace dollars didn't circulate quite as much as Morgan dollars. They're also a lot newer in terms of when they were struck. The Morgan dollars going back all the way to 1878, the earliest peace dollar, 1921. You probably wouldn't find that dollar, though. The first year of the mintage for the peace dollar is a pretty special piece. BU peace dollars from that same distributor, and these pieces here would be considered BU, at least in my grading terms. These are available right now, or pieces that are somewhat similar to this, right? $33.99 a piece. That's pretty affordable. When we're talking about the random AU versions of the Morgan dollars at $36.99 versus these BU peace dollars at $33.99, I gotta think that the peace dollar is maybe a little bit of a better deal, but if you're not a fan of the peace dollar, I totally get it. That probably wouldn't appeal to you regardless what the price is. Apples to apples comparison, AU peace dollars from the same distributor, $29.99. Maybe that's the sweet spot here, right? That is really very close to those XF VG to VF dollars that we talked about in the Morgan series at $31.99. So AU peace dollars, even a little bit less expensive than that. And then they have VG to XF peace dollars at $27.99. If it were me, I would spend a couple bucks more and go for at least the AU versions of the peace dollars, if not the BU versions. The American Silver Eagle, though, 99.9% pure or 999 parts per thousand, right? We're talking about really close to pure silver, and the industry standard that would be considered pure silver. Their gross weight and their actual silver weight is the same, right? We talked about the idea of actual silver weight when you're talking about a piece that has been alloyed, but these contain no alloy, at least not a registered amount of alloy. So each one of these contains exactly 1 troy ounce of pure silver. So their actual silver weight is the same as their actual weight, 1 troy ounce. That's an easier way to think of silver in a lot of regards. They tend to have much less collector interest. Now, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. There are people who collect entire series of American Silver Eagles. I find them to be a very attractive coin, so I understand the idea, but mostly these are going to be in a much, much higher state of preservation. They were non-circulating legal tender, continue to be so to this day. And because of that, rarely will you see these pieces that are actually worn. So these are going to be in a higher state of preservation. Their mintages are much higher. These are melted in far fewer numbers than the Morgan dollars and the peace dollars have been over time. And consequently, you're going to find these pieces almost always in high AU to low BU condition. At the worst, I would look for pieces that are at least 65 to maybe 67, 68 on that Sheldon grading scale. So maybe a little bit less collector interest, but they still make a fine thing to collect if that's really what you like. There's just not quite as much history and romance dealing with the Silver Eagles as there is with these earlier pieces. The condition is likely to be uncirculated. APMEX, the same distributor that we're talking about before, has random date BU pieces. Again, I'm not a fan of using the term BU. It just means kind of lower end uncirculated. $36.82 a piece. Keep in mind that these contain a full troy ounce of pure silver, while these only 0.7734 of a troy ounce of pure silver. So if you're comparing the actual silver weight and you're talking about the value represented in each one of these, that price at $36.82 does make sense. You're still paying a premium. You're paying probably $2 or $3 or maybe $4 more than the value of the silver, but you're going to pay a premium on pretty much anything. So if what you're really after is just the pure silver value, the American Silver Eagles do make a lot of sense. They are also easier to buy and sell. There's no hemming and hawing when you're bringing these into a dealer. A silver eagle is a silver eagle is a silver eagle. You're not talking about rare dates and mint marks and condition quite as much. The American Silver Eagle is cut and dried. It's a lot easier. And for a lot of people, that makes their stacking much easier. And I totally understand that. So these pieces are probably what you want if you're really just after the silver play. Are there more interesting examples of them? There are. Just as there are rare dates and mint marks for the classic coins, there are pieces like this proof American Silver Eagle. It is a beautiful coin. It is made as almost a presentation piece in a very nice clamshell case with an outer box, a certificate of authenticity. So you can find more interesting and scarce versions of the American Silver Eagles. There are special privy marks, there are special mint marks, there are special types and varieties of the American Silver Eagle that might scratch that itch if you really want a collectible piece, but you still want to stay within the realm of the American Silver Eagle. I don't have very many of those myself. To me, it's always kind of been a strange thing to want bullion that is rare at the same time. If I'm talking about wanting something that's a little bit more scarce and interesting, that's probably why I would go with the earlier pieces in the first place. There are lots of interesting things to explore when it comes to the American Silver Eagle. And since I've got examples here, this is a 2025 American Silver Eagle. This is a 2010, I believe, American Silver Eagle. Virtually identical on the obverse. That's the front of the coin. But when you're flipping them over, this is the traditional heraldic eagle that was used from the time that these were first released in 1986. And then we have the Flying Eagle version that replaced it in 2021, I believe. And you can see it's just a different style eagle. Some people really like the Flying Eagle version. I am warming up to this too. I originally liked the heraldic style, and that was the style that I was kind of used to. But the more I see the Flying Eagle, the more I can really appreciate it. I should also mention that with the release of this new type of reverse on these silver dollars, we did start releasing them with an anti-counterfeit device, which is the absence of a reed. You see that there's just a little bit, if I can find my pointer, we have a reed that's missing on these pieces, and that is to make them more difficult to counterfeit. You can see it right there. See if I can bring it in a little closer. Now, this differs from year to year. This, again, is a 2025, and that's the location of the missing reed on this example. But if you've got pieces that started in 2021 with the second eagle, the newer version, the Flying Eagle, you'll find that missing reed on different areas of the coin as the coins progress through time. It's just kind of an interesting anti-counterfeit device. So if you're thinking that you've got a coin that's somehow messed up because it's missing a reed, that was entirely intentional, helping with the anti-counterfeiting of these modern American Silver Eagles. I talked about just about everything that we can talk about when it comes to the history of these pieces, the positives, the negatives, the advantages, disadvantages of the American Silver Eagles versus the classic pieces. The weights are different, the alloys are different. It really comes down to what you like, and this is one of the most interesting things about modern bullion stacking, is that if you like the pieces with history, you've got examples. If you like the pieces that are just silver, you've got a great option here in the American Silver Eagle. I said that I would mention some of the tips. Now, these are really kind of Dubsy's opinion about these, and believe me, you are entitled to your opinion when it comes to either or. but just some of the things that I've observed over time that might help you if you're trying to kind of decide which way to go. There are no wrong answers. Just as with the pre-33 gold versus the American Gold Eagle program, there are positives and negatives to each of those. And that's why I've got a smattering of each, whether it's gold or if it's silver. I like having the opportunity to have some of each to take advantages of those advantages and disadvantages. I think I would recommend, if you're going to go for the classic pieces, avoid cleaned versions of those. I know some people don't like the idea of me talking about coin cleaning and the negatives of that. It comes from being a numismatist for somewhere around 50 years. We try not to clean coins whenever we can. Cleaning coins reduces their value in almost all circumstances, and I would rather have a piece that is authentic and aged rather than a piece that's been cleaned. I specifically avoid culls, and we talked about culls as being a coin that is so well worn that it is sometimes not even identifiable. And I'll try to get this out of the way so we can take a look at what I'm talking about when it comes to culls. Hopefully you can see that just fine. We're going to look at kind of an average circulated Morgan dollar. This probably grades XF to maybe very low AU. But we're looking at the grams here. And hopefully you can see it says 26.9 grams. That's not too far off from the 26.73. Remember, we're on the Navajo rug. This really, a scale should be on a hard, firm surface. So 26.9, that's right about where this coin is supposed to be, 26.75, 73, somewhere in that range. So this piece has lost very little of its weight. This is that cull that I was showing earlier. You can just barely make out that this is a Morgan dollar. 24.2 grams. This is why I'm not a fan of culls, of really worn, badly damaged, holed, scratched pieces, heavily cleaned pieces. And there are lots of people who like culls, who think of them as a very inexpensive way to buy Morgan dollars or peace dollars. To me, it's the worst of all worlds. It is a coin that is so badly damaged that it's not collectible, so that negates the point of being one of these early pieces. And it's missing a lot of its silver content, if nothing else, just from being worn down through circulation. So it's missing the attributes of the full-size American Silver Eagles, and it's missing the attributes of being a collectible silver coin. The worst of both worlds, in my opinion. Your mileage may vary, and I know some people are quite passionate about culls, but for me, they just never made sense no matter what the price was. So I avoid culls. Again, a little bit controversial. By the same token, I avoid beat up American Silver Eagles. There's some people who seek them out. These are coins that have been mishandled, badly scratched or cleaned or rubbed or whatever the reason. I don't think there's a reason to do that either. That negates all of the benefits of having these American Silver Eagles. And if I wanted a piece that was a little bit more worn down, I would go for the classic pieces. So when it comes to the American Silver Eagles, I try to get pieces that are pristine. You can get these directly from your dealer, who can get them from their distributors. You can get them from suppliers like Costco. And those pieces are typically going to be in full-size rolls, and they're going to be absolutely pristine or very close to it. Because of that, these would be the way that I would stack American Silver Eagles. I want them to be somewhere in the 69 to 70 range on the Sheldon grading scale, and I probably wouldn't dip much below that. Again, Dubsey's choice. And there's my usual advice also, which is when you're comparing the pieces, compare them side by side. If you've got an opportunity to go to a local dealer and you're looking for these classic American Silver Eagles and you've got a limited budget, put them next to each other. Take a few moments, take your loupe with you, spend some time, pick out the piece, especially if they're one money, if they're the same price regardless. You will inevitably find a piece that speaks to you more, or sometimes just pieces that don't speak to you, and you'll leave those behind. When you have an opportunity, compare these pieces side by side. I guarantee you it's going to help you in the long run. You'll get better at grading, and your collection and your stack will be much more substantial. Take a little bit of time, compare them side by side. And if you can get them slabbed. Now, we're talking about the American Silver Eagles in particular, but if you have an opportunity to get these pieces slabbed by a reputable third-party grader and there are no additional cost to getting that piece slabbed, even if it's from one of the grading services that I don't use or talk about very much, like Annex, If you can get a piece that is slabbed XF to AU condition and it's going to cost you the same amount as an average circulated silver coin, definitely snap that up. It all comes down to not paying any more for those slabbed pieces. And I feel the same way about American Silver Eagles. I know some people would never have these pieces slabbed and certified under any circumstances, and I get that. I don't have any currently certified American Silver Eagles. But if I was going to go to a local shop, or if I'm visiting an online bullion retailer, a special hint, check out their eBay stores also, because a lot of online bullion retailers do have eBay stores where they make special offers, including free shipping and often discounts. But if you're looking at American Silver Eagles and for the same price as a raw or uncertified American Silver Eagle, you can get one that's been certified MS69 or MS70 condition, same price, I would probably pick up the piece that has been certified and slabbed. It's a matter of opinion, it's a matter of choice, but to me there's value in having that coin graded and encapsulated, and if it's going to cost me the same amount, I'll probably pick up the slab piece before I pick up the raw piece. Again, your mileage may vary. It really comes down to how you feel about these pieces. So that's a pretty good introduction to the idea, the differences between the classic American silver dollars that circulated from essentially 1878 to about 1935, and the modern American Silver Eagle silver dollars that began being produced in 1986 and are still produced to this day. I do think that there are positives and negatives to both of them. I think that there are some benefits to both of them. How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts? Which ones do you prefer? It's easy to go for the American Silver Eagles if you're really just after silver. They make a lot of sense. But if you want a little bit of history, the being able to lay your hands on these pieces that circulated 100 years ago, or maybe even more than that, is a lot of fun, and you should really not discount that. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know which pieces you prefer. Do you have some of both, like I do? Do you prefer one over the other? And if so, why? And I encourage everybody who's watching this video to check the comments down below and see how other people view these pieces. It's fascinating to see how other stackers and collectors view the pieces that they have in their stack. And it's a great way to get free advice and information as well. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, love to have you click on that subscription button, become part of this community. I try to premiere new videos on Friday evenings, and hopefully you're watching this video with me as it is premiering on a Friday evening. And sometimes we actually go live afterwards for a live stream. That's a great way to kick off the weekend. You can ask me questions live. You can chat with other people in the community. It's just a fantastic way to start your weekend. The live streams usually follow the release, the premiere of the videos when they come out for the first time. And since I'm there during the premiere, you can also ask me questions as this new information is being provided to you. Try to be there whenever you can. I will try to be there as well. If you have any suggestions or comments for other videos or video series that you'd like to see me make, by all means leave that comment down below. And if I do make a video that touches on your suggestion, just like it did for Tommy Stacker 3286 in this video, if I do make a video or video series, I'll give you a great big shout out. I'd love to have you participate in what we produce on this channel and this community. Always be learning, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.